Good morning to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with a Hurricane Pro and HD video blog. Wanted to put something out for the weekend ahead, Memorial Day weekend coming up. Nothing to worry about in the Atlantic Basin, nothing to really worry about per se. In the Eastern Pacific, however, things are starting to get more active. We see these couple of X's here. What does that mean? Well, if we click on the map, it reveals all. We do have this one area here, and then another area over here. To my knowledge, these have not been designated as an area of investigation yet. In other words, they don't have that, well, in the Atlantic we call it like 91L or whatever, and in the Eastern Pacific it's the same type of naming scheme or convention, whatever you want to call it, system, where they assign a number 90 through 99 and the letter E for Eastern Pacific. That's probably coming up pretty soon, but so far, I guess we'd be starting at the beginning. It would be 90E, or Invest Area 90E. We don't have that yet, so we just have to call it Thing 1 and Thing 2. How about that? Obviously, this one looks the most like a tropical cyclone would look, right? It's got that curved look to it overall, and this is a little bit less organized. And if you mouse over it, it tells you what you need to know. The good news here is that we're talking about something that is over 1,300 miles to the south and west of Mexico, and these two disturbances moving off to the west and west-northwest with time. Here's a different satellite picture. There's Cabo San Lucas here on the southern end of the Baja Peninsula. And then you have mainland Pacific Mexico here, and these are way out in the open Pacific, moving off towards the west, maybe to the west-northwest with time. Not really much to worry about, but it does signify a increase, if you will, to the Madden-Julian Oscillation as forecast by both the Global Forecast System and its ensemble members. And that's what we're seeing here. This is showing us the amplitude of the MJO, or the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And what is that? Well, simply put, very simple terms, it's a period of enhanced upward motion in the atmosphere, and you can just about start to see that in the cloud shot here. You see all this convective activity in the tropical Pacific here, and that's the upward motion working in the atmosphere, vertical rising motion, as the favorable phase, or also called the wet phase, of the MJO, or Madden-Julian Oscillation, moves through. And we have the different areas of the globe represented by the chart: the Western Pacific, the Western Hemisphere and Africa, the Indian Ocean region, and the Maritime Continent. And so when the MJO comes out of the circle, and the circle represents very little MJO activity, it begins to amplify. So for example, if we were to see it come out and swing around like this and then maybe go back into the circle, whereas this would be the current position and these the forecast positions over the next 2 weeks, then you would expect to see a lot of tropical cyclone activity in the Western Pacific as it moves into those octants, those regions of this particular chart. And so right here is where we are. This is the start point. The green is the operational or ensemble mean, I guess it is. I should probably look that up to know precisely which. But that shows us basically what the GFS is indicating, and that is a slight increase in amplitude of the MJO favoring the Western Hemisphere. And so we can again see that in the satellite picture as more and more convective activity begins to take place, and this should only increase. In fact, the ECMWF version shows pretty much the same thing. There's the start position and then a nice march towards a pretty good amplification for, especially since there's an El Nino in the Pacific, that this would favor the Western Hemisphere towards the Atlantic Basin and the Indian Ocean region eventually over the next 2 weeks or so. And so that should lead to more development in the Eastern Pacific. This is California, there's the Baja, there's Mexico, here's Hawaii over here, and this is the precipitation shown by the GFS model, and that represents convective activity basically. And so you see that we do have this wet phase of the MJO developing here in the Eastern Pacific, and this will only continue. And so we see our low pressure areas, one right here, the other one here, And watch what happens over time. This is basically the current conditions. This would be tonight. This would be on Saturday night. And by Saturday night, the GFS indicating this one system takes over and becomes a fairly well-organized tropical cyclone, a depression, or a weak storm. And by Sunday night and Monday night, day 5, day 4 and 5 here, it develops and turns out into the northern reaches of the tropical Pacific, where water temperatures are slightly cooler, and it would probably die away. But then look what happens farther to the east, closer to Mexico by day 5, more enhanced activity here, kind of a monsoon trough setting up, where the wind direction is kind of turning around. You have this little trough of low pressure, focusing mechanism. That, with the favorable upward motion pattern of the MJO, means that probably sometime late next week we're going to get development here closer to Mexico, and perhaps we'll have a big high pressure area out here, and that can steer whatever develops out to the west like that. We'll see what happens. So this at least shows us that, yes, we are getting into that time of the year. It's hurricane season already in the eastern Pacific. We're getting into a more favorable Madden-Julian oscillation, and we're also in an El Nino, meaning that the Pacific is warmer than the long-term average anyway, especially several degrees of latitude north of the equator. Not so much south of the equator. A little colder than normal to the south, but the El Nino, the favorable MJO, spelling a beginning to the eastern Pacific hurricane season, and not just by calendar, probably by reality too. But nothing to worry about affecting land, so that's the good news. So there you go. I just wanted to put something out before we get into this Memorial Day weekend. Almost said Labor Day. That's in September. And I'll do another blog post, video blog discussion on Monday or Tuesday. We'll see which one, but definitely early next week. And we'll see what happens with these systems. But as I said, the most important thing is no worries to land areas, even Hawaii. No problems at all. Just something to talk about, I guess. That's it. All right. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Always a pleasure to do these videos for you on Hurricane Pro and HD. Have a great and safe Memorial Day weekend. We want to see you back here to enjoy these video blogs in the future. So be careful out there, and I'll talk to you again next week.